So we we got we got my sister. Introduce yourself.
Fredell Myers.
Okay, the one and only. So this show I put together, Diary of a Prisoner's Wife. Everybody, even the Diary of a Prisoner's Wife, you know, we all swamped over here.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make sure that we got this show in and that we talked about the issue at hand. First, I want to start off with your father and that story as far as the DVD and all of that. Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, well, my dad, he was what was known as a heroin kingpin in Harlem. He ran from 114th Street all the way to 120th Street. And back in March of 1983, there was actually an ongoing investigation prior to that for about a year and a half, and they moved in on our house on March 6th of 1983 and came in and did, warrant and searched the house. We found, several millions in the attic and $2.75 million in the safe and money and jewelry hidden around the house. No drugs in this case at all. It was basically conspiracy to sell drugs and tax evasion, those type of laws, and the RICO law and things like that he was caught up on, and him being a felon at the time and having 2 M16 machine rifles under his bed and things like that. So he fell under the violations of that and ended up being to 40 years. And now my mom, who was not involved in drugs or anything like that, but, just was with him at the time, and we lived in a mini mansion in Mount Vernon. And when they came in, they arrested my mom and my dad. And long story short, there was a trial, and there was a lot of newspaper and television coverage during the trial, and the result that they were found guilty, and my dad was sentenced to 40 years in prison. And back then, I think he did only 1/3 of your time, so he ended up serving 23 and a half years, and my mom was sentenced 7 years for conspiracy, and she did 4 and a half years, and in 6 months on probation or parole, whatever you call it. And so during that time, I was growing up. I lived with my aunts because they arrested all of my siblings actually. So I lived with my aunt until they started to release my siblings one by one. Some were released via bail, and one sister was released on holding charges. Another sister, the case never went to trial for her. So I ended up going back to my home, in which I grew up in Mount Vernon, and living with my sisters and going through school and the track team and all the things I was involved in, and just trying to hide the fact that my parents were incarcerated well into my 11th grade year of high school. When my mom came home, my dad didn't come home until 2006. So it's like, the struggle of trying to fit in and not let your secret be known, and, and hopefully nobody remembers your house from the case and the newspaper coverage, and, going forward in life, going to college, and I joined the military, just trying to keep busy, and a lot of that was hiding my secret as well. So, that's like kind of it in a nutshell, but like what I want to do, I'm interested now in reaching out to the youth and speaking to them, and also putting out a book to let them know, what it was to go through then, and the difference now that they have organizations in place to help children of incarcerated parents, and also just families of incarcerated members, and things like that. Just trying to, work towards something positive and making sure that the children know they have a right to see their parents, and, try to make provisions in order to do that through charities, and also make sure that their birthdays are celebrated and Christmas is celebrated, because I know how difficult it was for me, not having my parents there and going from one extreme to another. Like I said, it was a RICO case, so therefore it was a lot of things that were confiscated in the case. Well, basically the only thing that we were left with was our house.
Yeah. So you writing a book, right?
Yeah, I'm in the process of writing a book. I'm definitely looking to reach the masses, the people who are going through it, or adults that have gone through it, with child of an incarcerated parent like myself, and still dealing with the social things, and letting them know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and letting them know that, if if you keep your head up and do the right things, that when it's all said and done, when your parents are released, or your family member, your husband, your wife, your sister, your brother, at least it's a chance for you to, gain a relationship, as I did with my dad, and things like that.
Okay. So when your father, we want to go into a little bit when your father was locked up.
Mhm.
And your mother was locked up. Who did you stay with?
Well, initially, when they came to the house, they had to call my aunt Walkie, and that's my mother's sister. And it was my nephew and I, because they also took my sister Valerie. So my nephew was 4 years younger than me. So we went to go live with my aunt, and then the first person that was released off the case was my sister Valerie, because she's an epileptic, so she had a seizure in her cell one night, and the next day they had a special hearing, and they released her on her own recognizance. And when she came home, she, of course, came and got myself and her son from my aunt, and we went back to the house in Mount Vernon, and then the next person was my sister TC, because she had been exonerated of all the charges. They realized she was just there, basically. And also, after that, my sister Angie was married to one of my dad's lieutenants, actually. So a week prior to the March 6th arrest, they arrested my oldest sister, Tangie, who was married to Steve Young, which was one of my dad's lieutenants in the drug gang, which is right-hand man and all of that. If you read the Feds magazine, that's him, the bigger guy on the right side of him. And there was an M16 hidden in the wall of her house. So when the police came, the dog sniffed it out, and she got arrested for that. So basically, that was the only thing that she was convicted for, and she ended up being time served by the end of the trial. She only owed 1 day. So she went to all this in West Virginia jail with my mom, and she stayed 1 day, and then they flew her back, which is weird, but that was her time served. So, basically 2 days after the trial, my oldest sister was there. So I ended up growing up in the household with my 3 sisters for the 5 years that my mom was incarcerated.
Now,
my nephew and I. So it's an intricate story. It's so much to it. That's why I said I have to put it in the book. It's too much to tell, verbally. It's a very intricate story in terms of how he ran his business, and like I said, he has a DVD that's out. He broke it down pretty much how he did his heroin thing. It was totally different than anyone else, and the way he did it and stuff like that. I was sending some articles out. I was actually reading some of the articles from the New York Times and stuff like that. And I haven't looked on this stuff in a while. And it just amazed me when I was looking about all of the things that were confiscated in the house, and what they had to say about him as a drug dealer, because when I was at that time I was only 13 years old, so I didn't really understand. All I knew was that we had a lot of money and we lived in a big house, and then one day the police came and took my family away from me, and I was sat down and told that I had to grow up and be a big girl now and take care of my nephew. So I went from being a spoiled child, and then the next day I had to grow up and understand and be mature and take care of my nephew and just be strong,
Yeah.
So it was a big ordeal for me. It was a big ordeal. Just I wasn't a very materialistic child at all. But you when you're raised in a certain way, you have to get used to not having those things as well.
Exactly. Because basically, you grew up, like you say, you may not have been materialistic, but you grew up as a millionaire.
Right.
So y'all was in a mansion and all the cars and the jewelry and everything, even though you didn't know, really what was going on. You just knew the life that you lived.